Okay, so for number 5, it says, Donna makes a round pizza. She wants to put a cheese layer on the pizza. And then there's another typo, right? If the cake is 8 centimeters in diameter, how many square centimeters of cheese layer does she need to put on the pizza? So obviously we're still talking about the pizza. Maybe someone's blending this with like icing on a cake, but it's still the same idea. So you know that you have something that's round and you're gonna say that that's the circle. So the question is, how many square centimeters of cheese layer? So that's another clue, because whenever you're talking about area, it ends up being square centimeters because it's taking up space. So, or square inches, square centimeters, square feet, like we saw with, a carpet, furniture. So that's another clue that you're actually gonna use the area formula, which is pi r squared. So let me pull that up. So we're saying that those are the two that you want to just have in your mind whenever someone's talking about round, is pi times the diameter for circumference, and then pi r squared for area. So they're telling you the diameter in this question, which means you actually need the radius. So who has the answer for number 5?
I have D.
That's correct. Who has a question for number 5? So everybody's good with that one? You got D?
I don't even have the paper. I couldn't find it. So.
Oh, okay. So this one is, let me just show you. Can you still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're in the Google Classroom and you click on classwork, it's from yesterday. So it says April 8th. And then it just says word problem. So it says April 8th area and circumference word problems. When you click that assignment, there's a link to the PDF that was online.
Okay.
So then when you click that, it opens up.
All right.
As the worksheet.
Thanks.
No problem. So that's correct, Gladys. Hopefully everyone else does have D. What you have to make sure that you do is use the number 4 for the radius. So you're always looking at a word problem, trying to visualize what's happening in the storytelling of it, because it will help you make it more real. It's not just the regular numbers and symbols of an equation. And in this case, if they're talking about the cheese layer, you want to use a radius, and that number is not in the word problem. So that happens sometimes, especially in a word problem, where you're saying, okay, if I know that the diameter is 8, I should be looking for the radius to do this. So I need to say 4 times 4 is 16, and then say 16 times pi is the 50.24, or you're putting the answer D. So now let's take a look at number 6. It says Cynthia wants to buy a round photo frame for her brother. The radius of the photo frame is 9 centimeters. What is the photo frame circumference? So now this is using the word circumference, but they could have just said, frame, like just leaving something like that, especially talking about paintings or pictures. And then what you're saying is, okay, that's still the outside border, right? So they could also say something like border, right? So in this case, they did say the word circumference. So that's a clue that you need the circumference formula, which is pi times the diameter. So what is the diameter of the photo frame?
18.
Yes, it's 18. So this is another example where you don't have the number 18 in the word problem. So because they're telling you the radius is 9, but you need the diameter, you have to double that. So what you're really saying is 18 times pi to do number 6.
Yeah.
And then that answer is what?
A.
A. So did anybody not get A?
A.
So Josette, did you have a question about number 6?
Yeah. No, but she said the answer is A.
Yes. So do you have a calculator with you?
Yeah.
So what you're saying from this problem is you want to do pi times the diameter. If the radius is 9, then the diameter is double that. So the diameter is actually 18. So what you want to type in the calculator is 18 times 3.14.
Oh, I always will forget 3.4.
And that's another thing. When you draw out your index card, you could put that on there too. So far we've done the Math is Fun Pi quiz, or that's what you can do. It's in the assignments, and we've also done the area and circumference quiz. When you are drawing your little index card, or if you're just gonna draw the circle in your notebook, you wanna say that too, 3.14. So that this one is in the directions. So what they're telling you is just use this 3.14 for pi every single time. So first, what I am doing is just figuring out the squaring, because a lot of times, like we said, if you're doing area, you are using a smaller number. Like in number 5, we just use the number 4. So if you already know 4 times 4 is 16, all you're typing into the calculator is 16 times 3.14. For number 6, you're saying 9 plus 9 is 18 to get the diameter. So 18 times 3.14. And then for number 7, it says Brian made a tasty burger. The diameter of the burger is 5 centimeters. What is the area? So now you're back to an area formula. So what do you actually need? Do you need the diameter?
No, the diameter is 5.
Right, you don't need the diameter, right? So when you're doing area, you're back to pi r squared. The r stands for radius. So if the diameter is 5, what is the radius of the burger?
1916.
If the diameter is 5, then the radius is going to be half of that.
2.5.
So what you're going to say is 2.5 times 2.5 times 3.14.
Can
Calculator.
we, excuse me, can I do it just thinking and do it mentally instead of doing the whole thing?
You can do it mentally, especially in multiple choice. So like if you're saying to yourself, especially without a decimal, right? But even with a decimal, what we're saying is that if you know, like number 5 was, the radius is 4. So if I say, I already know 4 times 4 is 16, I know that in my mind already. And then I know I want to multiply that times 3, a little bit more than 3. Right? That can help you in multiple choice because you're going to have an estimate. So this is where we were saying, this is what you should be doing, is predicting, which is basically estimating if you can. So the same with number 6. If you're saying, I know it's 18, 18 is basically just saying 20, right? So like we said, if you can think about money, you know, like bills, it does help. So if you can say, okay, I need to multiply 20 times about 3. That means I'm looking for something a little bit less than 60 because I'm rounding the 18 up to 20, but I'm also rounding the 3.14 down to 3. So if I'm looking for something that's about you know, in the close to 60, when a number like 56.52 is on your multiple choice, you're going to pick that one. So I definitely think you should use as much mental math as you can, even just the mental space, because we're talking about geometry. So even understanding that you're talking about, you know, half of 5 even times 3. Right? Or half of 5 times half of 5, right? So even if you said to yourself, what is half? I just want to round that down to 2. And then 2 times 2 is 4. And then 4 times 3, right? And then bump that up a little bit. On even something like this, if we're looking at all of the answers, the smallest answer is E, right? And that last one is the smallest numbers that we actually worked with. So even not doing all of the figuring, you're saying, okay, I'm looking for a number that is, if I said that the diameter of the burger is 5 and I chose, you could choose to use the number 3. Because what are you really looking for in number 7 is 2.5. 2.5 is the radius. But if you don't want to work with that decimal, you can say, okay, let me just act like the 2.5 is a 3. 3 times 3 is 9, which I already know from the multiplication table. And then 9 times 3 is how much?
You know what? How I did that was
27.
just divide the 5.
Well, you can divide the 5. That's what you're supposed to do.
That's the only thing. And then that's the thing, that I do that right away. But when I need to write it down, the whole problem, that's the point, when I just get lost.
Me too.
Sometimes in your mind is really faster. Like we said, your mind is faster than a calculator. Your mind is faster than writing. But and your test is going to go from easier questions to more difficult questions. Because this is the high school test, you're going to have something from maybe even like the 8th, 9th grade, like something that's foundational, all the way to something that we haven't even gotten to because it's for the 12th grade.
Okay.
So because of that, you have to have a balance between, I can do this in my mind, but I also can do it on paper. When you do it on paper, you're training yourself to go step by step. So in this case, number 7, if you were forcing yourself to do it on paper, the first thing is to always write down the formula. So in this case, when they're saying, what is the area of the burger? You should write down this. A equals pi r squared. So when you're working on paper, you have to have a system in place so that you don't get lost. So if you write down A equals pi r squared, after you write A equals pi r squared, you replace the r with a number. So now the next line that you write down is A equals pi 2.5 squared. Now you're back to the order of operation, saying 2.5 times 2.5.
Come here.
Is that making sense?
Okay.
So the way to not get lost on paper is to just do every single step and write it down. So now you're still going to write A equals pi times 6.25 because you got rid of squaring the r. Now you're saying times 3.14, you're still going to write A equals 19.625.
Oh, no.
So you're going to, when you're doing something on paper, you're looking at the question and you're asking yourself, what is the question? The question is, what is the area of the burger? So what formula do I need? I need to write down the area formula. Because sometimes in a question like this, they tell you what the area of the burger is, and then they ask you, what is the diameter or what is the radius? So it's always important. All of these questions were asking for circumference and area, but occasionally they give you the circumference and ask you about the diameter, or they give you the area and ask you about the radius or diameter. So those are the ones we're going to do next, where we are trying to, they're giving us the A or the C. In that case, you still have to start with the formula, but you need to now replace the A with the information from the word problem, or replace the C with the information from the word problem. So the best way when you're doing it in your head, or I'm sorry, when you're doing it on paper, is to write down the formula, replace or substitute any letters that you know the information for, and then you're just doing the operations. It's either going to be multiplication or division with these kinds of formulas, right? So that's what's really important, is just say it's really multiple steps. There is a difference though when you do things in your head, the steps are going faster in a way. And you might actually do what you feel like is 2 steps at once. So what I'm saying is either way is fine. You want to know how to do it on paper though, so that when you get to a more challenging problem, you still are forcing yourself to go step by step by step.
Okay.
In this case though, like we said, if said what's half of 5 is 2.5, but I don't want to use a decimal, let me just act like it's a 3. If I say 3 times 3 is 9, because I'm still going to do the radius squared, and then 9 times 3, I'm still going to come out with a number. What is 9 times 3?
18.
27.
27.
27.
So I'm looking for something that should be greater than or less than 27.
9.4.
If I rounded the 2.5 up to 3, then I'm looking for a number that's less than that, right? So this is what you have to, when you're doing something in your mind, you have to kind of, you're still predicting. You could use a 2 and round the answer up. You could use a 3 and round the answer down, right? So if you're saying to yourself, 3 times 3, or 2 times 2 is 4, and then the 4 times 3 is only 12, I need to push that answer up a little bit because I knew I rounded down, right? So you have to still be predicting because you're kind of trying to work with the number. So I think you should use both, a mental math strategy, especially for predicting where your answer is going. Because you're doing multiple choice, you want to kind of be looking for your answer out of A, B, C, or D for the ones that you're going to work on. So like we said, there's going to be some that you haven't seen that you're just guessing to put an answer in. Then there are some where you're like, I'm not sure, and maybe it's a choice between 2. But if you kind of know, hey, this has to do with circumference or area, or, this has to do with perimeter, then you should be predicting what the answer is going to be as you work with the information.
Right.
So how many people had a chance to do the second page?
I did it.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do is take a look at number 1 and perhaps number 2 if we have some time.
Okay.
So now these are not, there's no answers, but it's still circumference and area. So number 1 is talking about the diameter of the Earth, and it's asking you for the circumference. So here it's got the Earth has a diameter of 7,926 and 41 miles. What is the circumference of the Earth? This would be the distance you would have to walk if you could walk around the equator. So they're telling you circumference. So that becomes the pi times the diameter. So what is the circumference of the Earth?
24, 8, 88, 92, 74.
Yes, you're just multiplying 7,926.41 times 3.14. Any questions about number one?
7,000.
All right, so now number two. This one, you're doing both. The circumference for each size of pizza and the area for each size of pizza. So for the small pizza, it's saying that the diameter of the small pizza is 8 inches. So for number two, and then part A, it says, what is the circumference of the pizza? So if you're looking at the small, right, the diameter is 8 inches. So to find the circumference, you're saying 8 times 3.14.
2512.
I can.
So that means you're saying C equals 2512, right?
Okay.
Now for that same pizza, it's going to ask you what is the area. So now what number do you need?
24.
The radius.
You need the radius of the small pizza. So when you're writing your formula, you should be saying 4 squared times 3.14.
The
5 without doing anything else.
So what is the area of the small pizza?
negative that.
It, small pizza. 6.
50.24.
6.
What is it?
50.24.
Yep.
No.
So now this is where you might do both, right? We said if the radius is 4, you can do the 4 times 4 in your head. And then in the calculator, you can just type 16 times 3.14. So now you're going to do the same thing for medium and large. So what we're going to do, because we are basically at 30 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say we'll just go over these tomorrow morning and just go over the answers. But I'm also going to find another worksheet where we're going to go over if we have the area or if we have the circumference. So basically doing the formula the opposite way or doing division instead, the complementary operation. So what I'm going to do now is just ask you if you have any questions or like, you know, what a problem might be if you're not seeing how to get the answer right away. So like looking at the medium pizza, if you're going to model the same thing you did for the small, the medium pizza is 10 inches. So to find the circumference of the pizza, you should be saying 10 times what?
5.
10 times pi. 10 times pi or 10 times 3.14. So now for the area of the medium pizza, what are you going to multiply times pi?
5.
5 squared, right? So now for the area, you don't need 10, you need the radius, which you need 5. But still, because these are smaller numbers, you're like, okay, 5 times 5 is 25. So I can multiply 25 times 3.14. So what you want to be able to do is understand the radius and the diameter. And then especially if you have the smaller number that's in the 12 times 12 multiplication, you want to start with that number. So like the 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25, and now you should already be predicting for the large pizza. What number would you need for the area of the large pizza?
6 squared.
Right. So now you're saying 6 times 6. So all you're really adding to all of these with the circle is 3.14 all of the time. So we'll go over those like 4 answers officially for medium circumference and area, large circumference and area, and then this last question about the bicycle wheel. We'll go over those in the morning, tomorrow. But you really want to make sure that you know all of those vocabulary words, so that if it's saying radius, but you know you're predicting looking for diameter, you're already set to double it. If it's giving you the diameter and you know you need the radius, you're already cutting it in half. Like, oh, they said 10, I really need 5. 5 times 5 is 25. And then I'm saying 25 times 3.14. So the key is being fluid with the definitions and imagining something. So if you drew out diameter and you drew out radius on your note card or on your piece of paper, that's what you want to think of when you're reading radius of the burger or diameter of the cake. You want to really picture something in your imagination because it helps you. That's how you read anyway, right? So we said that in reading. The reason why you're doing speed reading is to practice seeing a word and visualizing. That increases how fast you can read because the mental pictures are coming really fast. If I say like, you know how people say, don't think of a pink elephant. That's not possible, right? Unless you're just not listening, most people start thinking of a pink elephant because to understand the words means to visualize. So this is what you have to do in science and in math. As you see words, you have to come up with some type of imagery. Otherwise, there is no understanding. Understanding is really, I have a mental picture. Something is like communicating to me, either when people are talking, or when I'm reading the words. But the same thing happens. I have to be able to visualize something or I'm not understanding. Right? So everything in math is still working on reading. Like, do I understand when I read the word border that that's circumference? Or do I understand that circumference is the outside rim of the shape or of the circle? Do I understand that perimeter is the outside border? If you don't really visualize those things, then you can also be lost in the understanding of what they're actually asking you for. So like 5 minutes looking at the note cards that you wrote, the more that you draw them out, the easier it is to remember. So like looking at math is fun is one thing, but when you draw it out, there's another layer of experience because your hand is moving. Or like Jamie did hers on the computer, so designed a little graphic, you know. When you do that, this is why writing is sometimes better than typing on the computer. When your hand is really moving and taking notes or writing a letter, there's more of you into it, so the memory is there. When you're like, okay, let me draw every right angle of the box, like I'm doing a square and I'm putting a box in every corner. That memory of doing the 90 degrees, it stays with you longer when you draw it out. Just looking at something works sometimes, but committing it to memory, this is why we said do the multiplication table while you're jumping rope like Akila and the Bee. Or take a walk and listen to it and say it, you know? So if you're gonna do the squares and you wanna speak it into your phone and say 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and then you're listening to your own voice and saying it while you're walking, that's now like several of the senses. That's how we have all of our memories. You know, if you think back to something that's really from when you were younger, and you're like, oh, I remember a birthday party, or I remember my favorite cartoon, right? If the song for the cartoon comes on, or a commercial that's really old, you can remember the whole thing with just the first couple of words or the first couple of notes sometimes. That happens all the time. Like, I haven't heard this song since my junior high school dance. And then what happens? You're like, I remember that boy that I went with. Then I remember what he was wearing. And then I remember what I was wearing and where I bought it, right? A flood of memories comes back, right? Because one thing is a trigger. You have to still say to yourself that this is the way your brain works. So when you're trying to learn, you're trying to set up triggers in advance, right? This is already the way that our brain works. So what you want to do is, sometimes there's resistance in learning, like when you feel like you have to learn. But like we said about music, how many songs do you know? Probably thousands. And did you ever really try to learn them? Maybe like three. Maybe three, you sat down and said, what's the lyrics? But all the other ones, you're not trying to learn. It's repetition, which is what we're doing by talking about the formula 3 days in a row. And then it's the music, it's where you were, it's a whole bunch of things, right? So what you want to do, you want to learn this. You have to accept that you want to learn this. It's not enough to just apply to the class and come to the class and now come to the digital class. You have to really, in your heart and mind, accept you're going to learn it. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people know this formula, and you can too, right? So first you're going to accept it, and then you're saying to yourself, how do I have to learn it? Now it's just a matter of setting up those triggers so that you can commit it to memory. But if you fight it, your own mind is not going to want to remember, right? If you're like, I hate geometry, I hate math, I'll never get this. That goes back to like when we did orientation, you cannot say those things to yourself.
I don't hate it, I want to learn it.
You have to say, I love circles. Let me see how many circles I can find today. And when you twist off the cap to your water, you're like, oh, here's a circle. Let me measure this cap to my water. What's the diameter? Right? You have to love it. Fall in love with it.
Oh, I'm loving it so much that I want a round table now.
Exactly. That's it, Zoila, right? And then try to do as many senses as you can, right? So you're looking around for as many circles. You're going to like read the formula. You're going to record it into your phone. You can listen to it while you're doing, this is why we're doing Khan Academy. If you're folding clothes, that is a low-level task. So you can stack that with watching a video, right? If you're cooking rice, if you're doing something low-level, you can layer so that you don't feel like you want studying to be a good experience for you. Right, so you gotta sit in your favorite room, you gotta maybe make your favorite cup of tea. You know, you have to do the things that make you in a good mood, because that's part of the resistance again. If you're like, oh my God, I gotta study, and you go to a place that you don't like and you're like locked up and you're like, everybody be quiet, and you're like, if everything is resistance, you can sit there for 30 minutes and when you get up, you have not learned anything. So even if
I have done that.
And that's why it might be too much. You might say to yourself, today I want to study for 10 minutes only, and by the time I am done, I will memorize the circumference formula. Just one thing. You're going in with one objective, right? So and you're also saying, okay, I'm only gonna do this for 10 minutes. So now I am drawing circumference. I'm saying circumference. I'm saying D, C equals D pi. I'm saying pi is 3.14. like for you, Josette, if you're like, hey, I keep forgetting the 3.14, then your goal today is to say, I'm memorizing pi. It's
Okay.
3.14, it's 3.1415, it's 3.14, it's, you know, that's just your one goal for the day.
Okay.
But when you do that, tomorrow, you're starting from that place instead of saying you have to start all over, right? So the
Okay.
idea of learning is building. Like maybe when you learn the song, you're like, oh, I learned the hook first. Because that's what I always hear. That's what's always playing, right? Then maybe you're like, I learned the first verse, right? Because now I'm paying more attention to the song, right? So it's still a process and a layer, but you're going into this with more intention. So now the reason why I'm saying this is because by tomorrow, you want to know them all. So we've left
Okay, great.
rectangle and square and triangle and Pythagorean theorem, and we're on circle now. But when we go to the 3D shapes, we want to build from square and rectangle and triangle and circle. So you don't want to be like, what was the formula for square? You want to be like, I know the formula for square and I'm just adding height. I know the formula for circle and I'm just adding height, right? So the more that you're committing them to memory, the better. So today, again, we're not adding that much. We're just saying that you definitely want those note cards, or you definitely want a page in your notebook, and you want to just say, if it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I reviewed a shape a day. And I'm just doing like 5 minutes of study. Like we do the multiplication for 5 minutes. That's worthwhile. 5 minutes every day. It's just like exercise.
You're right.
Like, I'm gonna exercise for 7 hours. It's not the same if you do 15 minutes a day for 7 years. 15 minutes a day is better than a marathon of 7 hours. You're talking about the long haul. So for us, we're in April. If you're gonna go do your test somewhere in May or June, you're talking about 5 minutes a day of multiplication is better for your test than 5 hours the day before you take the test.
Okay.
That's just the truth when you're building. So don't overwhelm yourself, but go into your studying with at least one goal, you know? And then don't, when you're studying, stack your low level tasks, because I know everybody has stuff to do. Either get up earlier by 10 minutes or stay up later by 10 minutes. If you can't overlap, then you're just trying to make the most of another set of 5 or 10 minutes. But you have to go into it saying, today I'm learning circumference. Tomorrow I'm learning area. And then whatever I have to do, as many senses as I can, I'm gonna layer that so that I never forget it.
Okay.
Right? You got to hold on to this for like 90 days, especially because the school is not open in April, right? And it's looking a little sketchy for May. So if they say it opens in the summer semester, then you're looking at going to take the test in June. So what you want to say is, okay, that's a good thing. I have 60 days. But by the same token, I got to do something every day for 60 days. So let me not be overwhelmed. Let me just commit to 5 minutes a day. Right?
Yeah.
There are some things that happen that you never forget the first time they happen, because there's so much emotion into it and there's so much of your senses into it. You can have a conversation with somebody, if they're rude to you, they'll be like, I never forgot that person. Like how many people are like, I'm never shopping there again? Because you had one bad experience, right? You never forgot that. Or similarly, you had a great experience somewhere. and you never forgot that person, right? It doesn't take a lot to memorize, but you do have to be in the right mood, and you do have to use as many dominoes as you can, as many triggers as you can. But your brain is already doing this all the time, already memorizing songs, TV shows, jingles, people's names, phone numbers. So what you want to do is copy your own self. What do you like individually? You know, like, do you like music? Do you like moving around? Do you like visuals? And then do as many of those things as you can. So the note cards really help with geometry because we are talking about abstract shapes. So I would say, you know, draw them out, color them, do them on the computer, you know, like whatever you have to do to, as soon as someone says round cake, round burger, carpet, you are picturing a circle, a diameter, a circumference, a radius, an area.
Right. All
So
right.
try those last couple of ones out. I'm gonna send you another one. Uh-oh. There's
Uh-oh. Hello.
This is the sign.
Hi.
When the naked baby comes, that
Oh,
means class is over.
lindo.
Say hi.
Hi. Adios. Adios.
Say adios. That
Adios.
means there's nothing else to say. When they let the naked baby in, that means it's over. So I will see you tomorrow. Try out that last one, and I will put the
Oh, qué
word
lindo.
problems in for tomorrow. So if you want to look at them tomorrow morning, we'll just go over. If you have the
Ay, qué lindo.
circumference or the area, you're going to do division, right? So this is another thing we're going to memorize.
Miss Edu. Hello.
Sí, señora.
Oh,
Dímelo, or they
señora,
can't
I
see you.
can't text you.
No, you could just see them.
I can text you in, remember?
Sure, or you can stay on. If everybody else wants to just hang up, then you can ask me. So if there's no other questions, just look for a new, I'll send a remind message when I put it up in the Google Classroom, but it'll be for tomorrow's class, just another way of looking at the formulas. And then try out that last one about the bicycle wheel and the two that we just went over. Get the numbers for the medium and the large pizza, and we'll go over them tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
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 So you
All
can,
right,
I can leave.
bye.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good one, everyone.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
You too.
So Josette, what's your question?
Okay, what happened last night, I was in class in Google. So I tried, first of all, I see the video and I try to make practice to the circle values. But the number I get, then say try again, try again, try again. So but when I get it, so then tell me, we not understand, we could not understand your answer. Try again.
Mm-hmm.
So I
And
don't
that was
understand.
on Khan Academy?
Yeah, yes.
Sometimes you have to put the answer in a certain way. So like normally you only have to put numbers in. If you type something else, they could say they don't understand it because they're only looking for numbers.
Because it was equal 3. So I write it like that.
Right, so you might just want to put,
We could not answer.
yeah, so just try putting in just like if the answer's 3, just put in 3.
Okay, all right.
Don't put in any other characters because it's only looking for numbers.
All right. Okay,
So try that and see if that works.
okay.
All right,
So
I'll
your son
see
is
you.
beautiful. I think it was
Yep, 2.
Oh, that is boy.
This is a girl.
Oh,
She's just, her hair's not done today. And she's naked.
she's
So-
lovely. Okay, see you tomorrow.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Okay, have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.